Hello and welcome. So tonight we are looking this afternoon, this video, we are looking at the progress on how things are coming together with the two-shot exterior and interior for the medieval times illustrations. And for this, we've got where it all began. So over here, I've got my well-developed sketch. That's my biggest piece of advice for everyone is to please continue to think through everything. I had an original small little sketch that I did as my first thumbnail, but then when I took it into Photoshop, I still thought through all the little items, even down to where the apples are going to be placed within this hay bale over here, thinking through all the details for where the stones are going to be, how this stuff is going to work, the interior shot for the Bavarian village inside of the city wall, and then as we start to move forward from there, I go into my flat color. With the flat color for the interior and the exterior shot, I'm doing both of these steps in tandem with one another. So after I get my sketch completed, I'm doing this one with the outline work. Otherwise, from your sketch, you would go back and you would add the line work in, and then you would go into the flat color. For this, no line work, so I'm going into my flat color. I'm starting from the very back of my exterior shot, and then I'm going to work my way forward. The very back here is the sky, the village, and I'm just finding a base middle color based on my reference images. So within my reference images, I've got a strong one that has some good lighting. It's this guy right here. And I'm using the colors from, you know, those two images to really help guide my color space because I am not an expert at that. And that's my starting position. From there, do my flat color on both my interior and my exterior shot. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to do a first shadow pass. So I got two of those. This is my first shadow pass here. And I'm going to do the shadow pass on the interior and the exterior shot. Again, with the shadow pass, working from the very back towards the foreground for the interior and the exterior. And then I go back and I'm going to do my highlight pass for the interior and the exterior, working from the back of the picture towards the foreground. Over on the right-hand side, now we can talk about where this exterior shot is at and talk about the differences between what this next pass has provided us visually. I think the Bavarian village inside of the city walls is the best example of how much more we're getting out of this highlight pass. That village is really starting to come together. We're starting to see some of the items and elements on the inside of the village in a very big way. It's still sort of a single color, so we are going to need to go back and add some more color to that space later on. But we've got 80%, 70% of the work done on that interior Bavarian village shot, or sorry, the Bavarian village inside of the city walls. The castle over to the right-hand side is still totally feeling like it's made of stone, so there's another color or two that needs to be added to that. And I might shift the colors to where it looks more like the color of the city wall so that they feel more connected. But that's something at the end to be able to decide. Um, yeah, the cart did not get the highlights quite the way that I wanted it to. The highlights did not pop as much as I thought they should. So there's definitely a brighter highlight pass, but there's more work to be done with that middle tone. After I complete this highlight pass on the interior, which is what I'm going to be working on and talking you guys through here in just a little bit, is I'm going to go back to my exterior shot. I'm going to work from my back, and I'm going to work from my front, and that could be considered a first polish pass on this piece, where I'm going to be connecting between the deep shadows that I've created. I'm going to be working through and inside of some of those deep shadows from the back to the front, and then all of these steps, the purpose of this is to get my piece developing at the same time, so for the interior and the exterior shot, and making these broad decisions by figuring out where the shadows are at and then establishing where the highlights are. I'm going to make, or where the light is coming from, I'm going to be making better decisions about how to be able to connect the highlights and the shadows together to make this piece really cook and look strong overall. Um, wherever you can, try to add narrative into your piece, try to tell the story of what this city is, why this city exists, any little details that you can add in about the building that your character is going into from the outside is also helpful. So for this medieval city, I've decided it is going to be the city from the fairy tales that had the golden goose that laid the golden eggs. And so that is what the banners are symbolizing over there above the city gates, above the entrance. We've got a golden goose on the left-hand side, and then the fabled golden egg over on the just below it. And so you get a little bit of an Easter egg, a duck egg there, um, to be able to tell the story for what's happening within this shot. And yeah, man, now, from here, let's go in and let's check out that interior shot. So I've got some of the highlights that are starting within this space already. I'm pulling a lot of my colors from my exterior shot to be able to go through and do the interior. The interior, I've got an example here of going back and adding, where is it? Some of those middle, yeah, middle colors. So without those middle colors turned on, do, 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 I'm jumping just a little bit ahead here, but I want to show you how this is going to work. So I'm going through and I'm establishing where my light is going to be at within this shot. So one good example of this is the dartboard or the target over here on the right-hand side. This is with my lighting pass. I've got my base color. I've got my shadow just on top of that. And without that highlight, you can see how flat that target looks. It still looks like a target, but the highlight is really doing an awful lot to be able to help make that thing pop and to be able to sell the idea of the lighting entering into the space. And I'm just going to continue to work the lighting coming from this little crack in the door and entering into the here in a really unique way. And once I get that lighting established on the exterior of the cart, there's also another window over here that's going to be letting some light into the space. I imagine that to be sort of in this area just off the shot. So whatever's over here, we're going to have some light that's starting to kind of pool and brighten up this whole little section, as well as the pot and the stove. So we've got two little sources of lighting. This one's going to be more intense because it's not diffused by the windows. And this is what it looks like after I get that highlight pass created. I'm going to go in and I'm going to start working my middle tones again so that I'm working in to be able to connect from those deep shadow regions that I created. Right. So these are all the really dark spots within the shot and kind of finding the middle ground between the two. So there we go. We got our deep shadows. And then I'm going back and I'm adding another shadow pass to make it even darker in some little areas where the light is absolutely not going to hit. I'm trying my absolute best not to use absolute black. Instead, this is a very dark purple that I'm using here. And that's going to help just to define and pop some of those little details even more. And from that stage, we've got a really good rendering that's going to start to develop within this piece. You can see that I'm adding some of those little dark shadows. I've turned it off again. So underneath the stairs, the light isn't really going to hit down there. So we've got some deep shadows in the corners of this interior. The light's not really going to get back there. And you can see what a difference that makes to be able to make some of those other items start to pop and show up. And one interesting thing that I'm doing is I'm not really rendering too much. I'm leaving my brush strokes really rough, leaving some patches in here just to be able to give the impression that maybe there's some other objects that are stashed behind there in an interesting way. Or over here on the left-hand side, just doing some loose vertical lines to be able to keep the idea of that wood grain working throughout the piece. So still a lot of work to be able to go through and do on this one, and that's what I'm going to be painting right now. So I want to show you guys sort of what the process looks like for that, and as I continue to move forward with it, and we see this thing really start to lighten up on this highlight pass. So we got some other neat things that we can do. Within each one of these, I want to go through and I want to work from as far back within my shot as I can, and then work my way forward towards the front of the scene. So what else is really far back? I've got my door. I've done a highlight pass on the door. I've got the bright light going on around the edge of the door. There's still more work to be done with that. Probably needs to be increased later on as I get into my polish pass. But I've got these items up here in the top of my shot that are going to be catching some light. Now, this is an interesting one because we've got various materials here. On the jester's cap, we've got metal. It's the first time I think we've painted metal within this class. So I'm going to create a new layer for the jester's cap, and I've got my fuzzy brush on. I don't want my fuzzy brush. I want this guy. Let's bring my opacity up to 50%. I'm using 50% for this highlight layer so that I can work into my final choices. So for the jester's cap, you got the bells on the end of it. We're going to let those be metallic. Uh-oh. What's going on with that bell? Oh, I see. Could probably turn this down a little bit more to 22% so that we still have some of that green that's popping through. There we go. And so those are three little yellow dots that are really creating some interest and going to catch some nice little highlights over within the scene. Other than that, on this gestures hat, we've got our green that's starting to show up, but I really wanted it to be a few different colors. So let's try and use the colors of the exterior of the shot. So we've got the pink and the pink and the blue is what they're using for their tint color on the outside. So I want to try and include some of that pink and blue on the gestures hat for where the highlights are at. I'm at 22% on my lighting and shading. There we go. You can see that 22% really allows me to be able to start creating some lighter gradients within my shot. There we go. Just changing the color just a little bit. Because that's looking pretty good to me. So we've got that one. We want this one to be, this one can be pink as well. Have it catch some of the highlight. I'm trying to be intentional about the shape choices that I'm doing. So I'm not just trying to draw thin little lines here. There we go. Now the pink's starting to come in. Then we said blue is going to be our other color. So some rim lighting down here. And let's use the purple for the edge of the hat down here. Cool. So that's kind of a non-traditional shading, but we're getting there. It's looking pretty nice. And now we've got our burlap, our sort of what you call it, the mattress up over here. And what colors am I using? So I've got my tan. I've got a brighter yellow that I'm using on the exterior of the wall. I think that's it's the same color. Now, this is an interesting one because this is a material that is not refractive of the light whatsoever. So for a highlight on this, we want to keep it really, really loose and light. It's not going to get too much of it at all. And we know that the light's coming from the door. So if there is any highlight here, we don't want it to be too strong. It's going to come right over here like this. So that's going to be enough for a highlight pass on that. And then we've got the pillow up on top of there. I'm not sure where else I used that light blue. Hope that's not the same color as the sky. Oh, no. Okay, that'll work. So got the pillow, one layer above it. And again, let's just think about where the light might hit just a little bit. This is one of those that's mostly going to get shaded an awful lot and really start to disappear up into the roof. Maybe there's some other little sections that are starting to get just a little bit of a highlight from where that light is entering in from the door, but not too much. So we're going to leave that there for now. I could create a sort of placeholder and a reminder. Cool. That's working pretty good for me. Let's keep pushing forward. We've got the dragon to do next. We've also got his cage to go through and work a little bit. So let's do the dragon. That's interesting. I know this is an environments class. The dragon shouldn't even be there, but we're gonna do the dragon. Okay. So with this red, I don't have a alternative color for the red really that I've used anywhere. Maybe that's it. Let's get on my dragon layer, select him, new layer up. Yeah, that's a little bit, but let's go brighter. Let's give it more of an orange color once he actually starts to be illuminated. I'm going to go up a little bit brighter, so I'm drawing more confidently here at the beginning. Can always change this color later on if I don't like it. Drop the opacity down. So we want most of that tail to have the light really sort of start to wrap around it. There we go. And I'm going to use my sponge tool just to be able to soften up some of these so I don't have to go back and do this later on while I'm thinking about it now. It's one of those areas where I need the gradient. Adding a second pass just to be able to do the lines on the tail. Let's go in and let's think about where that lighting is going to hit on the dragon's legs. Get it going along the edge of the wing. At 43%, and then it's going to dissipate on back. Let's have most of him be in shadow here. Get a little bit of his knee. Maybe a little bit of this. It's going to get hit by the light. And then we want a little bit of his face. Not too much of it. I'm going to drop this down even further. What else? We can do a little bit down here. And use the smudge tool. So this is the interesting part, right? If you guys come from drawing dragons, there's always high schoolers that like to draw dragons. Then you are used to doing one dragon on a sheet of paper and making that dragon as hyper detailed as you possibly can, adding every little scale. and structure onto it, but I'm really treating this dragon right now as a background element. So I'm not going through and overly rendering him. And you can see how that lighting pass has really paid off, where things are getting brighter around the dragon's tail, and then you can see the lighting dissipating as it starts to move back. It's working with the shadow layers that I've created within my shot. And now let's just push that even further. So I do think I've got a brighter color here that I'm using for the cage. I'm going to hold down Control by clicking on the icon. Let's go to a new layer. And let's go in. Let's see. Yeah, that'll work. We're at 28%. I'm going to go 50. So since it's metallic, we're doing a different material on a new layer while I'm doing this. There we go. Let's hit erase. There it is. Cool. It's now really establishing where those highlights are going to come from. Really light up the bottom of the plate. Probably still need to make these highlights quite a bit brighter since it's a metallic item here. But for now, we're going to leave it alone. And then let's go in and let's add some highlighting to the exterior of the cage. Okay, that should work pretty well. Later on, I can always go through and I'd like to make it more yellow with the lighting. It's usually what I tend towards because it's sunlight, but I can go and use my dodge tool. Just to make it look a little bit more metallic and really catching those highlights where I want it to. Cool. So now we're telling the story of that cage quite a bit better. And without that layer, you can see how flat it looks. And now it's just starting to come to life in a much, much better way. All right, next up, we've got the shelf, new layer for it. Then we've got our highlight color from the wood over here. And now let's start painting that shelf. So I'm up to 100%. I don't want that. I'm going to go down to 54, but I still want this to be pretty good and bright. The exterior. There we go. Got some hinges on those doors that I started to establish previously. We're going to give those the gray color that we did for the outside door hinges. That's what I mean by really thinking through all the different stuff. So this is still pretty high up here. We can do a little bit of light, and that's starting to get in on the inside of those shelves. There it goes. Now we're really starting to get that shelf look and feel. This is fun because we've got a doorway here, so I can break this up. I start to describe the piping on this thing for how the door is catching the light. Maybe a little bit more shading there. where the highlight's going to be, if there's like a wood engraving or something on this door. It's giving some wood grain that's catching a highlight, but we want it to dissipate as it moves further away. When I say dissipate, I mean I want the light to drop off. That's what I'm trying to describe. Okay, so next up, there's my door hinge color. We're gonna put that on the same layer. All right. So that's looking pretty good. And see how much more depth we're creating on that door by going through and adding that. Don't forget we've got this color up here that we need to decide on, and that's going to play a big part in making this section feel even more 3D, as well as what's going on with the top of this thing. So the top of it right now is this bright purple. I think let me just use my magic wand. I can grab this layer and I'm going to go over top of that. I'm at 54%. Go down even further, 30%. Yeah. All right, so let's turn that highlight off. And now that's really starting to tell the story of the light coming in over here on the left-hand side. We've got our bowling pins that are our juggling pins that are going to need some lighting as well. But before we move too far forward, we've got our steps that I need to figure out my highlights for. So let's go back in here, and on those steps, I'm using this color. Grab my steps, new layer up. This is super bright. A little bit less here. There we go. It's working good for me. Now we got our steps highlighted. That's looking nice. We've got this color on either one of those. Let's go ahead and do these guys. So this is one of those where, yeah, the light is coming in and the majority of the light is going to be coming in on an angle. So hitting this way. So it's going to be brightest right back here and then start to dissipate. So this side over here is really going to be getting less light, even though it still has a highlight. So I want to make this brighter and all this stuff down here pretty bright. Okay, so where are those highlights? What color is that? That color. Where did I use that color on the exterior? That might be a new color. Try the wood highlight again and see how far we get with that. Yeah, it's giving me something. That'll work. Okay. Nice and bright. That's feeling good to me. Got a little bit of an overhang, but we want this brightness to disappear as we're moving down. That'll work. And we're at 30%. At 100. Just to be able to give a little bit more form and shape, but I'm not going over it nearly as much as I did on the other side. I can use the burn tool on this as well to be able to darken it up. Use my smudge. Smudge this out. Okay. So on this side, since it's a brighter wood, I'm gonna lighten it. And then on this side, because the highlight is less, I'm gonna darken it. Deselect, check it out. That's looking pretty good to me. Let's turn it on and off. Yeah, so now light's starting to come in through that section. It's feeling and looking good to me. I like it. Next up, we've got our burlap sacks, which really should not be catching any highlight at all. For the most part, those are going to be really dark within those crevices and those corners. Now let's go back to the bowling pins. Those are an easy one to figure out. Okay, bowling pin. We got this super bright color over here on the horse. Bring this up to almost 100. It's getting a little bit close. This is a more organic shape that I want to make sure I get it right. And this is the benefit of working on a different layer. So this is still not bright enough for these bowling pins. So image adjustments, hue saturation, we're going to go to lightness. There we go. Now we're starting to get something that actually stands out. Grab that color. Let's keep all this nice and bright here. There we go. All right, that's for enough for now. I think since those are a round object, they're going to get a softer light treatment as I continue to move forward with this. Let's do the rope next. So on the exterior here, I've got some rope. It's got a brighter color on it. 78%. That'll work well for me. That's a nice bright color for the rope. I'll work my way down. I'm in it a little bit too close. I'm going to work faster than that. Notice I'm not spending 30 minutes trying to render every little fiber on this rope right now. I'm still working loose, even though I'm going through each little object. All right. And all of these little choices that I'm making here, I'm not going quite as far on the rope the second time or the second location. But sorry, the second rope, I'm not highlighting as much of the rope as I did on the first one, because I'm always keeping in mind the idea of having the shadows dissipate and where their drop off point is going to be. You know? So that's working pretty good. Let's unselect that rope, turn the highlight off, highlight on. Looks good to me. I'm gonna drop it down just a little bit and right here, color dodge. I'll brighten it up right in the middle so it's a little bit brighter where the light is actually hitting it. Now we've got our hula hoop. This highlight's really important for the hula hoop because it was not standing out at all just a moment ago. And this is going to make it pop off of there you go. I can see it really popping off of the target within the background. And I was thinking about it, one of the things that makes a hula hoop is that let's give it a little blue color. Just be able to bring some of that blue into the rest of the shot. Let's drop the blue down to 27%. Is giving it the stripes on the hula hoop. There we go. Cool. Now it's really popping out there. And that's a good little piece of visual rhythm that we're creating within the piece. I like it. Nice. We are really working our way through this pretty quickly. Now we got those two trunks that I need to figure out. I've been kind of avoiding them with that idea in my head of the light dissipating, or not hitting the right-hand side as strongly as it's hitting the left-hand side. So coming up with a good sort of middle color for that. It's a little tricky. So that one feels pretty good there. Let's go a little bit brighter. And I'm going to start from the side. That's getting too bright. And I'm working on my original layer. So that's not good. Let's back that up. All right, we're at 27%. Okay. This is a pretty ornate chest that I've got here. So let's give it the light on this side. That feels good to me. Let's go with some gold embellishments on it, just to be able to pull a little bit of that yellow through the rest of the shot. I think I was imagining it going here and here. So visually, that's breaking up the space in a nice way. Going over this to be able to soften it up. Use the smudge tool. And get rid of some of these guys as well. All right, let's back it up. Cool. So that's starting to get some lighting on it. It's working for me, but same deal that we had with the it's. I don't like to use the airbrush too much at this stage, but for that one, it needs it just so it's not a flat brown top up on top, but instead it's got a little bit more color to it. And once I go back and do that second middle shadow pass, I'll be able to make the sides of the box more defined. It should start to really come together. Probably need to lighten the color of these shadows here too. They're a little bit dark for the way the lighting's reading in there. We'll get to that here in a bit. So now we got this kind of weird greenish color. I think that's the color of my grass. I don't know what I was thinking there. All right. Is it grass colored? Nope, it's not grass colored. Uh, what should the highlight color be? Yeah, I guess it's our tan is going to be the highlight color. I think brown leather could work pretty good on this one also. So grab it. Next layer. Oh, still in that round fuzzy brush. I don't want that. Hard brush. There we go. All right. Do 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 do. Yellow. And now let's figure out my highlight colors. We already know we got to highlight this stuff. It drop off a little brighter, a lot brighter back here. Cool. That looks good. Tan. Let's give it a new layer since we did a lot of stuff on that last one. There we go. A bit more of a highlight right here. It's pretty close to the rope color, so it's not really popping, and it's going to cause my ropes to disappear, which I really like the ropes a lot. So I want those to continue to stand out. So I'm going to shift my highlight color, hue saturation. Let's bring it over to, yeah, I think the green will work. Looks good to me. We are working our way through this thing, y'all. Pretty quick. It's a pretty quick process when you break it down like this. So we got some more deep shadows. This is where we're getting into the oven and the sign. I haven't touched these darn burlap sacks yet because I think that they're mostly going to be in the super dark color and they don't really have too many highlights. So if I was going to do anything on those as a separate layer, what's a color I don't really have down here? I haven't brought the red down within this space. So let's give it a reddish patch for the repair section. Man, I really don't want to add too much of a highlight because I think those are mostly going to be in the shadows, but we do have this thing. New layer. There we go. Just a little bit. Right around there. Maybe a little bit here. That might be catching a little bit of the light. That's really going to be about it. The rest of those are going to be pretty dark. Okay. Let's get into the oven now. For the oven layer, this is where we start to see that other light coming into the shot. Um, we've got a dark gray, bright color there. Maybe we could use this bright purplish color that's on our yak. I think that could work pretty good for it. Now, let's go in and let's start painting in that oven highlight. This is like cast iron, right? It's not like super polished metal. Again, trying to be conscientious of the shapes that I'm painting here. There we go. That looks good. A little bit of a highlight over here. I want it to dissipate because that window does have what you call it, a shade going over the top of it. So a little bit of an oven highlight here. Definitely going to be hitting in this section. There. There we go. So now the oven's got a nice little highlight, but I can still go in and add a little bit of rim lighting on the edge of it. That should look nice. There we are. Cool. That oven and the pipe coming out of it now super rendered. You can see how much better that looks without the lighting on there. And again, thinking about the shapes that I am painting while I'm going through and doing this. Next up, we've got the carpet within the foreground. Yeah, we've got kind of a color scheme now for the overall shot. So let's work off of that. We're at 52%. And we're just going to try and keep that gestures hat that we have up at the top going as a theme. Around the rug. That's kind of like their main emblem because we've also got it on the sign as well. And a little bit of that purple. What other colors do we have? Blue. Bit of blue right around the outside. That'll work. Cool. That's enough colors for the rug, just to give it a little bit more interest. And now we've got our sign over on the left-hand side. Sign. And for the sign, we're going to use the same rules that we used for this brown leather over there. Then we said we want the sign to catch a lot more lighting because of the light that's coming in from the left-hand side. So let's use that to kind of block all this stuff in. Rim lighting going on, piping. It's going to get darker over on that side, but we want to use that same color scheme, blue, on the sign too, as if it's painted. The adult, and for the kid, Use the yellow. And one other color. We got the pink. So that sign is starting to come together just a little bit better. I think it can still be stronger, but for now, we're going to leave it like that. And last but not least, we've got the coping around the top of this item, or the top of this interior. Okay, so that's a good one to go back and do our middle tone in. Use my brackets to change my brush size really quickly here. Okay. A darker pass feels a little bit sloppy to me right now, but we're gonna leave it. That is a problem for future will. So, what to do about these burlap sacks? I feel like that's the last thing I need to solve before I move on to the next step in here. Let's use our super dark color again. They just are not quite doing what I want them to do yet. That's at 59. Let's go to 37. There we go. There they are. Starting to live in the shadows now. Still not crazy about them. One more thing. All right. So I don't like the color that I'm using right now. I'm going to end up adjusting it, but I think it's starting to get me where I want to be. The shadow pass on these darn sacks. Less. Image adjustments. Hue saturation. Let's take down the saturation on it. There we go. So they're not popping as much. It's a good one for my navigator as well to see how they're looking now. Quite a bit less dominant. Let's go in here, go to the shadow layer on those guys. Image adjustments, hue saturation. Like the green, let's turn down the lightness. There we go. They're not showing up as much now. That feels better. Let's get on the shadow layer. Image adjustments. Better. Okay, cool. Let's just check a quick before and after, see how this feels from where we were at with the shadow pass versus the highlights. See how things are coming together. It's always fun. Yeah. All right. So on the left, we've got the highlight pass, or sorry, just the first initial shadow pass. And now on the right-hand side, we've got the lighting that's starting to come in there. Still plenty of work to be able to do for sort of the ambient occlusion and working those middle tones a little bit better so that some of my objects start to pop and creating extreme highlights. But I think a lot of that can be handled during the first polishing pass on this thing. And we're starting to get our shapes and our tones together, and we've got a good direction to be able to move forward with this interior shot. It's pretty startling difference between where we were before adding the highlights and where we're at now. And it's really starting to feel jam-packed and very full inside of the scene, which is exactly what I want it to do. I've always got the ability as well, just before I end this recording, to be able at the very end, I try not to do this. I always think the more I'm doing this, the more I'm kind of cheating myself within the shot. But you can create a light layer like this. See how it looks within the thumbnail view, and then that gives you the ability to be able to turn it up and down. So we're getting just a little bit more ambient light going throughout this entire thing. You can also mess with the layer interpretation of it. There we go. So that's with it off and on. But I think that's just, I don't want to do that. That's like the very, very last thing to do. And if I do that too soon, then I'm going to get lazy with the other choices that I'm making. And I really don't want this kind of light layer to dominate my decision making too much. That's why I always save it for the very end for polish, 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 polish three. But before that, it can be fun to check just to make sure that your lighting is heading in the direction that you want it to go. And I think we're getting there. So I'm gonna stop this recording for now and yeah, check you in the next video.